You're not here by chance tonight. Your soul seeks to understand the true power that emerges when you become indifferent to what was once yours, and the Stoics knew exactly how to transform absence into irresistible magnetism. What Marcus Aurelius taught about detachment will become your inner fortress. Tonight you are not here by chance. You are here because your soul needs calm, because something within you desires rest, not just for the body, but for the mind as well. And the ancient wise ones, the Stoics, knew how to achieve this. During the coming hours, you will hear lessons from thousands of years ago, words written by men who faced wars, losses, betrayals, and yet found peace in the midst of chaos. Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, Seneca. They did not speak from theory. They spoke from the inner battlefield, and tonight their voices will become a whisper that accompanies you to sleep. You do not need to understand everything. You do not have to strain to remember every phrase. Just listen and let their teachings cleanse your mind as rain cleanses the dust from the world. This is not just another video. It is a refuge, a truce, a place where you can release the weight of the day and remember that even in darkness, there is wisdom waiting to be heard. The philosophy of Stoicism teaches us something profound about the nature of human suffering and peace. It reveals that most of our anguish comes not from external circumstances, but from our resistance to what already is. When we fight against reality, when we demand that life conform to our expectations, we create an internal war that exhausts the soul and clouds the mind. But there is another way, a path of acceptance, wisdom, and inner strength that the Stoics mastered through centuries of practice and reflection. Marcus Aurelius, who held the weight of an empire on his shoulders, wrote in his private journal that the universe is change, and our life is what our thoughts make it. These words, penned in quiet moments stolen from the demands of rulership, remind us that even those with the greatest external responsibilities understood where true power lies, not in controlling the world around us, but in mastering the world within us. Tonight, as you prepare to surrender to sleep, consider this fundamental truth. You cannot control the actions of others, the passage of time, the weather tomorrow, or even your own body's inevitable aging. But you can control your response to all of these things. You can choose your thoughts, your attitudes, your values, and your actions. This distinction between what is up to you and what is not up to you is perhaps the most liberating realization a human being can have. Epictetus, who knew physical bondage as a slave and yet achieved the ultimate freedom of mind, taught that we suffer not from the things that happen to us, but from our judgments about those things. A criticism from a colleague has no power to disturb your peace unless you grant it that power through your interpretation. A change in plans cannot ruin your day unless you decide to resist it rather than adapt to it. A loss cannot destroy your happiness unless you have placed your happiness entirely in external things that were never truly yours to begin with. This is not to diminish the reality of pain or to suggest that we should become emotionless beings. The Stoics were not cold or unfeeling. They were deeply human individuals who chose to respond to life's challenges with wisdom rather than mere reaction. They felt grief when loved ones died, but they did not compound that grief with anger at the natural order. They experienced disappointment when plans failed, but they did not add bitterness to that disappointment by insisting that life owed them success. The practice of Stoicism begins with a simple but profound shift in perspective. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" When faced with difficulty, the Stoic asks, "How can I respond to this with virtue?" Instead of demanding that others behave as we wish them to, we focus on behaving as we know we should. Instead of trying to control outcomes, we pour our energy into controlling our efforts and intentions. This shift is not easy, especially in a world that constantly tells us we can and should control everything. We are sold the illusion that the right technology, the right strategy, the right attitude can bend reality to our will. But the Stoics understood what modern neuroscience is now confirming. Our brains are wired to resist uncertainty, to fight for control, to create narratives that make us feel secure. Recognizing these tendencies is the first step toward transcending them. When you lie down tonight and your mind begins its familiar dance of worries and plans, remember that you have a choice. You can feed those thoughts with your attention, giving them power to disturb your rest, or you can observe them with the detached awareness of a wise observer. You can note them without judgment and then gently return your attention to the present moment, to the feeling of your body against the bed, to the rhythm of your breathing, to the simple fact that in this moment you are safe. The Stoic practice of evening reflection, which Seneca described in his letters, involves reviewing the day not with harsh self-judgment, but with honest self-examination. What went well? Where did you act with virtue? What mistakes did you make, and what can you learn from them? This is not about perfection. It is about progress, about becoming more aware of your patterns and choices so that tomorrow you can choose more wisely. Marcus Aurelius reminds us that we have power over our minds, not outside events, and that realizing this is the source of our strength. This power is not something we need to acquire or achieve. It is something we already possess and need only to remember and exercise. Every moment offers us the opportunity to practice this power, to choose wisdom over reactivity, acceptance over resistance, gratitude over complaint. The evening hours are particularly important for this practice because they represent a transition from the active engagement of day to the restorative surrender of night. This transition requires us to let go, to release our grip on the problems we could not solve today, to stop replaying conversations we wish had gone differently, to cease our mental rehearsals of tomorrow's challenges. This letting go is not giving up. It is an act of wisdom that recognizes the limits of our control and the necessity of rest. Sleep itself becomes a metaphor for the ultimate surrender that life requires of us. We must trust enough to lose consciousness, to release our vigilant monitoring of the world, to allow our defenses to drop. This nightly practice of surrender prepares us for all the other surrenders life will ask of us. The surrender of youth to age, of independence to interdependence, of life itself to death. The Stoics saw these surrenders not as defeats, but as natural transitions to be accepted with grace. The ancient Stoics often reflected on the concept of memento mori, remember you will die. This might seem like a morbid thought to carry into sleep, but it is actually profoundly liberating. When we truly accept the temporary nature of our existence, we stop wasting energy on petty concerns and focus on what truly matters. We become more grateful for simple pleasures, more forgiving of others' faults, more present to the beauty that surrounds us even in difficult times. Tonight, as your eyes grow heavy and your breathing deepens, carry with you the understanding that you are part of something much larger than your individual concerns. You are connected to all of humanity through the shared experience of struggling to make sense of existence, of trying to do good in an imperfect world, of seeking peace amidst chaos. The wisdom of the Stoics is not just ancient philosophy, it is a living tradition that can guide you toward greater resilience, deeper peace, and more authentic happiness. Remember that tomorrow will bring new challenges, but it will also bring new opportunities to practice wisdom, to choose virtue, to respond rather than react. The muscle of inner strength grows stronger with each use, just as physical muscles develop through resistance training. Every time you choose acceptance over resistance, every time you respond with calm rather than anger, every time you focus on what you can control rather than what you cannot, you are building the foundation of a life well lived. The Stoic path is not about achieving a state of perfect tranquility and never being disturbed again. It is about developing the tools and perspectives that allow us to navigate life's inevitable storms with greater skill and less suffering. It is about finding freedom not through controlling external circumstances, but through mastering our internal responses. It is about discovering that true happiness comes not from getting what we want, but from wanting what we have and accepting what we cannot change. As you drift towards sleep, let these ideas settle gently into your consciousness like seeds in fertile soil. Do not strain to remember or analyze them. Simply allow them to be present as you transition from waking awareness to the restorative darkness of night. Trust that wisdom has its own way of taking root, that insights reveal themselves in their own time, and that the practice of living well unfolds gradually through countless small choices made with increasing awareness and intention. The night is your ally in this journey toward greater peace and wisdom. It offers you the gift of rest, the opportunity to let go, and the promise of a new day to continue growing in virtue and understanding. Embrace this gift with gratitude, knowing that you have everything you need within you to face whatever tomorrow may bring with courage, wisdom, and grace. Would you like me to continue with section 2 of 10, with exactly 3,000 words? Sleep brings with it a natural wisdom that the Stoics deeply understood. In the quiet hours when the world settles into stillness, we are offered a sacred opportunity to practice one of philosophy's most essential lessons, the art of letting go. But this letting go is not a passive surrender. It is an active choice to align ourselves with the natural rhythms of existence, to stop fighting against the current of life, and instead learn to flow with it. The transition from day to night mirrors countless other transitions we face throughout our lives, from youth to maturity, from certainty to uncertainty, from having to losing, from independence to interdependence. Each of these passages requires us to release something we once held dear and to embrace something new and unknown. The quality of our lives depends largely on how gracefully we can navigate these transitions, and sleep offers us nightly practice in this essential skill. Marcus Aurelius, writing by candlelight in his tent during military campaigns, understood that each day is complete unto itself. He wrote that we should live each day as if it were our last, not because we should be morbid or anxious, but because this perspective helps us focus on what truly matters. When we approach each evening with this awareness, we naturally begin to sort the essential from the trivial, the meaningful from the merely urgent. What occupied your mind today that will matter very little a year from now? What conversations replayed in your head that served no constructive purpose? What worries consumed your energy despite being entirely outside your control? The evening offers us the opportunity to examine these patterns with gentle honesty, not to criticize ourselves, but to begin recognizing the habits of mind that steal our peace. The Stoic practice of negative visualization or premeditatio malorum might seem counterintuitive as you prepare for sleep, but properly understood, it is actually profoundly calming. By briefly imagining the loss of things we take for granted, our health, our loved ones, our comfortable circumstances, we cultivate a deeper appreciation for what we have right now. This is not about becoming pessimistic or anxious. It is about recognizing the temporary nature of all external goods so that we can hold them lightly and lose them gracefully when the time comes. Consider the bed you lie in, the roof over your head, the simple fact that you can breathe without effort. Millions of people throughout history would have considered these things miraculous luxuries. Even now, countless individuals lack such basic comforts. This recognition does not diminish your right to rest, but it can transform rest from a mere physical necessity into an occasion for gratitude. Seneca wrote letters to his friend Lucilius about the importance of preparing the mind for sleep through reflection and examination of conscience. He recommended reviewing the day's events not with harsh judgment, but with the curiosity of a scientist studying natural phenomena. What patterns can you observe in your reactions? What triggers consistently disturb your peace? What circumstances tend to bring out your best qualities? This evening examination is not about achieving perfection or eliminating all mistakes. The Stoics understood that error is an inevitable part of human existence. Even Marcus Aurelius, one of the most powerful men who ever lived, filled his private journal with reminders to himself about patience, humility, and self-control. If an emperor and philosopher needed constant reminders to practice virtue, how much more do ordinary people need such gentle guidance? The beauty of Stoic philosophy lies in its practicality. These are not abstract theories meant only for academic discussion. They are tools forged in the crucible of real human experience. Epictetus developed his teachings while enslaved, understanding intimately what it meant to have no control over external circumstances. Marcus Aurelius refined his insights while managing an empire and fighting wars. Seneca explored these ideas while navigating the dangerous waters of Roman politics. These men knew suffering, loss, betrayal, and disappointment. They were not naive optimists who had never faced real difficulties. Their wisdom comes from having wrestled with life's hardest questions and emerging with practical strategies for maintaining inner peace regardless of external circumstances. This is why their teachings remain relevant across centuries and cultures. As you settle into your evening rest, consider adopting some of the mental practices that sustained these ancient philosophers. Begin by acknowledging that today, like every day, brought a mixture of pleasant and unpleasant experiences. This mixture is not a flaw in the cosmic design. It is the very nature of human existence. Accepting this reality can free you from the exhausting expectation that life should be consistently comfortable or predictable. Next, review your own responses to the day's events. Where did you react with wisdom and virtue? Perhaps you showed patience with a difficult colleague, or you chose honesty when a small lie would have been easier, or you offered help to someone in need despite your own busy schedule. These moments of virtue, however small they may seem, are worthy of recognition and gratitude. Then, with equal honesty but without harsh self-judgment, acknowledge where you fell short of your own standards. Maybe you spoke harshly to a family member, or you avoided a necessary but difficult conversation, or you allowed anxiety to consume energy that could have been used more constructively. The Stoic approach to such failures is neither to minimize them nor to torture yourself with guilt, but to understand them as information that can guide future choices. This balanced self-examination helps develop what the Stoics called practical wisdom, the ability to see clearly what is happening both around us and within us, and to respond appropriately rather than merely react automatically. Like physical exercise, this mental discipline becomes easier and more natural with regular practice. The Stoics also emphasized the importance of perspective in maintaining peace of mind. When something disturbs you, they suggested asking, will this matter in 10 years? Will it matter in 10 months? Will it even matter in 10 days? Often, the things that seem monumentally important in the moment prove to be relatively minor in the larger context of a life. This is not to minimize genuine difficulties or real suffering, but to help distinguish between problems that deserve our full attention and worries that simply drain our energy without serving any constructive purpose. The person who loses a job faces a real challenge that requires practical action and emotional processing. The person who lies awake rehearsing an embarrassing moment from weeks ago is engaging in a form of mental activity that serves no useful purpose. Learning to make this distinction is crucial for mental peace. It requires developing what we might call emotional intelligence, the ability to recognize our feelings without being controlled by them, to acknowledge our thoughts without accepting all of them as true or important, to experience impulses without automatically acting on them. The evening hours are particularly valuable for developing this emotional intelligence because they offer a natural pause in the day's activity. Instead of immediately reaching for entertainment or distraction when you lie down, try spending a few minutes in quiet reflection. Notice what thoughts arise without judgment. Observe what emotions are present without trying to change them immediately. Simply practice the art of aware witnessing. This practice of mindful awareness was central to Stoic training, though they might not have used modern terminology to describe it. They understood that the unexamined life leads to suffering, not because self-examination is inherently valuable, but because awareness gives us choices we would not otherwise have. When we understand our patterns of thinking and reacting, we can begin to change them. The Stoics taught that our judgments about events matter more than the events themselves. This insight can be deeply liberating once we truly grasp it. It means that external circumstances do not have the power to determine our inner state unless we grant them that power through our interpretations and reactions. A traffic jam is simply cars moving slowly. We create the experience of frustration through our judgment that traffic jams are terrible things that should not exist. A critical comment from someone is simply sounds coming from their mouth. We create the experience of hurt or anger through our interpretation of those sounds as attacks on our worth or competence. This does not mean that all interpretations are equally valid or that we should never have emotional responses to events. It means that we have more control over our experience than we typically realize. By examining and sometimes challenging our automatic interpretations, we can often find more helpful and peaceful ways of understanding what happens to us. The practice of reframing events is not about denying reality or pretending that bad things are actually good. It is about looking for alternative perspectives that might be more accurate, more helpful, or more conducive to wise action. The person who gets laid off can focus solely on the loss of security and income, or they can also see an opportunity to reassess their career path and perhaps find more meaningful work. Both perspectives contain truth, but they lead to very different emotional experiences and behavioral responses. The Stoic practice is to consciously choose the perspective that promotes virtue, wisdom, and effective action, rather than simply accepting the first interpretation that comes to mind. This conscious choice of perspective becomes easier with practice, but it requires patience with yourself during the learning process. Like learning to play a musical instrument or speak a foreign language, developing Stoic mental habits takes time and consistent effort. The goal is not to eliminate all negative emotions or achieve perfect tranquility, but to respond to life's challenges with increasing wisdom and decreasing reactivity. As you prepare for sleep tonight, consider setting an intention to practice one small aspect of Stoic wisdom tomorrow. Perhaps you will pause before reacting to something that typically triggers your anger. Maybe you will practice gratitude for something you usually take for granted. Or you might experiment with accepting a minor inconvenience without complaint. These small practices may seem insignificant, but they are the building blocks of a transformed life. Every moment offers an opportunity to choose wisdom over habit, acceptance over resistance, gratitude over complaint. The person who makes these choices consistently, in small matters as well as large ones, gradually develops an unshakable inner peace that no external circumstance can disturb. The night offers you the gift of rest and the promise of a fresh start tomorrow. Receive these gifts with gratitude, knowing that each new day brings new opportunities to practice the timeless wisdom of the Stoics. Let your sleep be peaceful, your dreams be gentle, and your awakening be filled with renewed commitment to living with virtue, wisdom, and inner tranquility. Would you like me to continue with section 3 of 10 with exactly 3,000 words? The promise of tomorrow carries within it both hope and uncertainty, and it is precisely this mixture that the Stoics learned to embrace with remarkable equanimity. As you rest in the quiet of this evening, understanding dawns that each new day is not guaranteed to fulfill our expectations, yet it offers something far more valuable: the opportunity to practice wisdom regardless of what circumstances may arise. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus, who knew the harsh realities of slavery and physical disability, taught his students that freedom is not the absence of constraints, but the ability to maintain inner peace despite external limitations. This profound insight transforms our relationship with difficulty from one of resistance to one of curious engagement. When we stop demanding that life conform to our preferences, we discover a spaciousness within ourselves that no external force can diminish. Consider the nature of your own expectations as you settle into rest. How much energy did you spend today wishing things were different? How often did you find yourself thinking that your peace depended on circumstances changing in specific ways? The Stoic path invites us to examine these patterns with gentle curiosity, recognizing that our attachment to particular outcomes often creates more suffering than the outcomes themselves. This is not to suggest that we should become passive or stop working toward meaningful goals. Rather, it means learning to hold our goals lightly, pursuing them with full engagement while remaining unattached to specific results. The archer aims carefully at the target and releases the arrow with skill and intention. But once the arrow is in flight, factors beyond the archer's control determine where it lands. Wisdom lies in focusing our energy on what we can influence: our preparation, our effort, our attitude, while accepting gracefully whatever results emerge. Marcus Aurelius, writing in his personal journal during quiet moments stolen from imperial duties, repeatedly reminded himself that the universe is change and transformation. Nothing remains static. Everything flows from one state to another in an endless dance of becoming. Understanding this fundamental nature of reality can profoundly shift our relationship with loss, disappointment, and uncertainty. When we truly accept that change is the only constant, we can begin to see endings not as failures, but as natural completions. The relationship that concludes, the job that terminates, the health that declines. All of these can be understood as part of life's natural rhythm, rather than as personal catastrophes that shouldn't be happening. This perspective doesn't eliminate the pain of loss, but it can prevent us from adding unnecessary suffering through our resistance to natural processes. The evening provides an ideal opportunity to practice this acceptance. As the day concludes, we naturally experience a small death, the ending of today's possibilities, the completion of today's story. Tomorrow will bring different opportunities, different challenges, different versions of ourselves. The person who wakes up tomorrow morning will be subtly changed by today's experiences, carrying new memories, perhaps new insights, certainly a slightly different perspective shaped by the accumulated moments of this day. This constant transformation of the self can be either a source of anxiety or a cause for celebration, depending on our perspective. The Stoic chooses to see it as evidence of life's creative potential. Each day offers us the chance to become slightly wiser, more patient, more compassionate, more resilient. We are not fixed entities struggling against an unchanging world. We are dynamic beings capable of growth and adaptation, living in a dynamic universe that supports endless possibilities for development. Seneca wrote extensively about the value of philosophical preparation for life's inevitable challenges. He recommended regularly contemplating potential difficulties, not to become pessimistic or anxious, but to build mental resilience and reduce the shock of unexpected events. This practice, which the Stoics called negative visualization or the premeditation of evils, might seem like a strange bedtime activity, but properly understood, it can be deeply calming. By briefly imagining the temporary nature of our current circumstances, our health, our relationships, our material possessions, we cultivate a deeper appreciation for what we have while it lasts. This is not about becoming morbid or fearful, but about developing the emotional flexibility that allows us to adapt gracefully when circumstances change. The person who has mentally prepared for various possibilities is less likely to be devastated by unexpected events and more likely to respond with wisdom and composure. Tonight, as you prepare for sleep, you might experiment with this practice in a gentle way. Consider some aspect of your life that you take for granted, perhaps your ability to see or hear or move freely. Imagine briefly what it would be like to lose this capacity, not to frighten yourself, but to kindle gratitude for what you currently possess. This exercise often reveals how many gifts surround us that we typically overlook in our focus on what we lack or desire. The Stoic practice of gratitude extends beyond material possessions to include the less tangible aspects of existence. The fact that you can think, that you can feel emotions, that you have the capacity to choose your responses to events, these are remarkable capabilities that we rarely pause to appreciate. Even the ability to suffer, while not pleasant, indicates that you are alive and capable of caring about something beyond yourself. This broader understanding of gratitude can transform our relationship with difficult emotions. Instead of seeing sadness, anger, or fear as problems to be eliminated, we can recognize them as information about what matters to us. Sadness often points to love. Anger frequently indicates that something important to us has been threatened. Fear usually signals that we care about our well-being or the well-being of others. These emotions, while sometimes uncomfortable, connect us to our values and to our humanity. The Stoic approach to emotions is neither suppression nor indulgence, but mindful observation and wise response. When difficult emotions arise, the trained mind notices them without immediate judgment, examines them for useful information, and then chooses a response that aligns with virtue and wisdom rather than simply reacting automatically. This process takes practice and patience, but it gradually leads to greater emotional freedom and more skillful action. As you lie in the quiet darkness, you might notice various emotions arising without your conscious invitation. Perhaps there is anxiety about tomorrow's responsibilities, or sadness about something that didn't go as hoped today, or anger about an injustice you witnessed or experienced. Rather than pushing these emotions away or getting caught up in their stories, try simply acknowledging their presence with gentle curiosity. What if you could observe your emotions the way you might watch clouds passing across the sky, noting their shapes and movements without feeling compelled to change or chase them? This perspective, central to Stoic practice, creates space between you and your emotional reactions, allowing for more conscious choice in how you respond to internal experiences. The Stoics understood that we cannot control what emotions arise, but we can influence how long they persist and how much power they have over our actions. Emotions are like visitors to the house of consciousness. We cannot always control who knocks at the door, but we can decide whether to invite them in for a brief tea or to let them move in permanently and rearrange all the furniture. This metaphor points to one of the most practical aspects of Stoic philosophy, the recognition that we have more choice in our mental and emotional lives than we typically realize. The automatic thoughts and reactions that seem to arise unbidden can gradually be influenced through consistent practice of awareness and conscious response. This is not about controlling every thought or emotion, which would be both impossible and undesirable, but about developing the capacity to choose our responses rather than being controlled by our reactions. The development of this capacity is gradual and requires patience with ourselves during the learning process. Like learning any new skill, it involves periods of progress and periods of apparent regression. Some days we handle challenges with remarkable equanimity. Other days we find ourselves reacting with old patterns of anxiety, anger, or despair. The Stoic path is not about achieving perfect consistency, but about developing an overall trajectory toward greater wisdom and peace. This long-term perspective can be particularly helpful during difficult periods. When facing serious challenges, illness, loss, financial stress, relationship problems, it's natural to experience a range of difficult emotions and to sometimes feel overwhelmed. The Stoic approach is not to deny these realities or to expect ourselves to remain perfectly calm, but to trust that we have inner resources that can help us navigate even the most challenging circumstances. These inner resources include our capacity for reason, our ability to connect with others, our resilience developed through previous challenges, and our fundamental freedom to choose our attitude toward whatever we face. External circumstances may limit our options significantly, but they cannot eliminate our basic human dignity or our capacity to find meaning and purpose even in difficult situations. Viktor Frankl, a psychiatrist who survived Nazi concentration camps, wrote that the last of human freedoms is the ability to choose one's attitude in any given circumstances. This insight, born from unimaginable suffering, echoes the ancient Stoic teaching that external events cannot determine our inner state without our participation. Even in the most constrained circumstances, some element of choice remains available to us. As you rest tonight, you can draw comfort from knowing that you possess these inner resources, even if you cannot always access them easily. Tomorrow will offer new opportunities to practice choosing wisdom over reactivity, acceptance over resistance, gratitude over complaint. Each small choice in the direction of virtue strengthens your capacity for future challenges and contributes to the gradual development of an unshakable inner peace. The night itself offers a powerful metaphor for trust and surrender. In order to sleep, you must relinquish conscious control and allow natural processes to take over. You cannot force sleep to come, but you can create conditions that make it more likely. A comfortable position, a quiet environment, a relaxed mind. This same principle applies to many aspects of life. We cannot control outcomes directly, but we can align ourselves with natural processes and trust that right action will lead to appropriate results. This trust is not naive optimism or blind faith, but a mature recognition that the universe operates according to principles larger than our individual will. The Stoics called this larger order the logos, the rational principle that governs all existence. By aligning our actions with virtue and wisdom, we participate harmoniously in this larger order rather than fighting against it futilely. Sleep well tonight, knowing that you are part of something magnificent and orderly, that your struggles and joys have meaning within the larger context of existence, and that each day offers new opportunities to live with greater wisdom, courage, and compassion. Let your rest be deep and your dreams be peaceful, preparing you for tomorrow's invitation to practice the timeless art of living well. Would you like me to continue with section 4 of 10 with exactly 3,000 words? The invitation to practice living well extends beyond individual moments of choice to encompass our entire approach to existence itself. As consciousness settles into the rhythm of evening, we find ourselves at the threshold between action and rest, between engagement and surrender. This threshold offers profound lessons about the balance that characterizes a well-lived life. The balance between effort and acceptance, between caring deeply and holding lightly, between engaging fully with the world while maintaining inner detachment from outcomes beyond our control. The ancient Stoics understood that this balance is not a static achievement, but a dynamic process requiring constant recalibration. Like a sailor adjusting sails to changing winds, the practitioner of Stoic wisdom learns to respond fluidly to life's varying conditions while maintaining a steady course toward virtue and wisdom. This metaphor of navigation is particularly apt because it acknowledges both the unpredictability of external conditions and the importance of skillful response. Marcus Aurelius, reflecting on his experiences as both emperor and philosopher, wrote extensively about the challenge of maintaining inner equilibrium while fulfilling external responsibilities. His personal journal reveals a man wrestling with the same fundamental questions that face all human beings. How do we find meaning in the face of suffering? How do we maintain hope without becoming attached to specific outcomes? How do we love deeply while accepting the inevitable reality of loss? These questions become particularly poignant in the quiet hours of evening, when the day's distractions fade away and we are left alone with our thoughts and feelings. The busyness that often masks our deeper concerns during daylight hours cannot survive the stillness of night, and we find ourselves confronting the essential questions that give shape and direction to our lives. The Stoic tradition offers not easy answers to these profound questions, but rather a framework for engaging with them constructively. This framework begins with the recognition that uncertainty is not a problem to be solved, but a fundamental condition of human existence to be accepted with grace. Once we stop fighting against uncertainty, we can begin to find freedom and even peace within it. Consider how much energy you expend trying to predict and control future outcomes. How often do you find yourself rehearsing conversations that may never happen, planning responses to situations that may never arise, worrying about problems that exist only in imagination? The Stoic practice invites us to notice these patterns of mental activity not with harsh self-judgment, but with the curious interest of a scientist observing natural phenomena. This scientific approach to self-observation is crucial because it allows us to study our mental habits without becoming entangled in them. When we can observe our patterns of worry, anger, or desire with some degree of objectivity, we create space for choice. Instead of being automatically controlled by these patterns, we can begin to respond to them consciously and skillfully. The development of this observational capacity is one of the most practical gifts that Stoic philosophy offers to modern practitioners. In a world filled with constant stimulation and demand for immediate response, the ability to pause, observe, and choose our reactions becomes increasingly valuable. This capacity allows us to respond from wisdom rather than merely reacting from habit, to act from clear intention rather than being driven by unconscious impulses. Epictetus, teaching his students in ancient Greece, emphasized that this capacity for conscious choice is what distinguishes human beings from other creatures. While animals are driven primarily by instinct and immediate environmental pressures, humans have the remarkable ability to step back from immediate experience, reflect on their options, and choose responses based on principles and long-term considerations rather than momentary impulses. This human capacity for reflective choice carries with it both tremendous possibility and significant responsibility. Because we can choose our responses, we become accountable for the quality of our reactions to life's circumstances. We cannot always control what happens to us, but we are responsible for what we do with what happens to us. This responsibility might seem burdensome, but the Stoics found it liberating. If our well-being depends primarily on our choices rather than on external circumstances, then we have much more control over our happiness than we might initially suppose. The person who loses their job but maintains their integrity and dignity has preserved something more valuable than employment. The individual who faces illness with courage and grace demonstrates a kind of strength that no disease can touch. These examples point to a crucial distinction in Stoic philosophy between external goods and true goods. External goods, health, wealth, reputation, even relationships, are valuable and worth pursuing, but they are not entirely within our control, and therefore cannot be the foundation of genuine well-being. True goods, wisdom, justice, courage, temperance, are within our power to develop and maintain regardless of external circumstances. This distinction does not lead to indifference toward external goods, but but to a healthier relationship with them. We can work toward health while accepting that illness may come. We can build wealth while recognizing that financial loss is possible. We can nurture relationships while understanding that separation and death are inevitable parts of human experience. This approach allows us to engage fully with life while maintaining the inner stability that comes from not depending entirely on things beyond our control. The evening hours provide an excellent opportunity to practice this balanced engagement. As you review the day's experiences, you might notice moments when you became overly attached to particular outcomes, times when your peace of mind depended too heavily on external circumstances. Rather than criticizing yourself for these moments, you can simply observe them as information about areas where further development might be beneficial. Perhaps you felt anxious about a work presentation because you were overly concerned with colleagues' opinions. Maybe you became angry about traffic because you expected the world to conform to your schedule. Or you might have felt discouraged about a personal goal because you were measuring your worth by external achievements rather than by the effort and integrity you brought to the pursuit. Each of these scenarios represents an opportunity for growth in Stoic wisdom. The anxiety about others' opinions can teach us about the importance of developing internal standards of self-worth. The anger about traffic can remind us that external circumstances will rarely match our preferences perfectly. The discouragement about goals can help us learn to find satisfaction in the process of striving rather than depending entirely on outcomes. This process of learning from our reactions is not about eliminating all preferences or becoming emotionally flat. The Stoics were not emotionless beings who had transcended all human concerns. They were individuals who had learned to hold their preferences lightly, to care about outcomes without being controlled by attachment to them, to feel emotions fully while not being overwhelmed by them. Seneca, one of the most psychologically sophisticated of the Stoic philosophers, wrote extensively about the proper relationship with emotions. He argued that emotions themselves are natural and often appropriate responses to circumstances, but that we can train ourselves not to be controlled by them. The goal is not to eliminate emotional responses, but to maintain the capacity for rational choice, even in the midst of strong feelings. This emotional intelligence, the ability to feel deeply while thinking clearly, becomes particularly important during challenging periods of life. When facing loss, illness, failure, or other significant difficulties, we naturally experience intense emotions. The Stoic approach is neither to suppress these emotions nor to be overwhelmed by them, but to allow them to flow through us while maintaining our commitment to acting with wisdom and virtue. This balanced approach to emotional experience can be practiced in small ways throughout ordinary days. When you feel frustrated by a minor inconvenience, you can notice the frustration without immediately acting on it. When you experience disappointment about a small setback, you can acknowledge the feeling while maintaining perspective about its significance in the larger context of your life. These small practices of emotional awareness and regulation prepare us for larger challenges. Like physical exercise that builds strength for demanding activities, regular practice of mindful response to minor difficulties develops the mental and emotional resources we need when facing major life events. The Stoic tradition also emphasizes the importance of community and connection in developing wisdom and virtue. While much of Stoic practice involves internal work, examining our thoughts, managing our emotions, choosing our responses, this inner development is ultimately directed toward more skillful and compassionate engagement with others. Marcus Aurelius frequently reminded himself that human beings are social creatures designed to work together for mutual benefit. Our individual well-being is intimately connected to the well-being of our communities, families, and ultimately all of humanity. The person who develops inner peace and wisdom naturally becomes a more positive influence on everyone they encounter. This connection between personal development and social contribution provides additional motivation for Stoic practice. We work on ourselves not only for our own benefit, but for the benefit of all those whose lives we touch. The parent who learns to respond to stress with greater equanimity creates a more peaceful home environment for their children. The colleague who maintains composure during workplace conflicts helps create a more harmonious professional atmosphere. The friend who can listen without judgment provides invaluable support during difficult times. As you settle into the quiet of this evening, you might reflect on how your own inner development has influenced your relationships and interactions with others. Where have you noticed that increased self-awareness or emotional regulation has allowed you to be more helpful, more patient, or more understanding with others? These observations can provide motivation for continued practice and evidence of the practical value of Stoic principles. The recognition that personal and social well-being are interconnected also helps address one potential criticism of Stoic philosophy: the concern that it might lead to selfish withdrawal from engagement with the world's problems. Properly understood, Stoic practice leads not to withdrawal, but to more effective engagement. The person who is not constantly reactive and emotionally destabilized has more energy and clarity available for constructive action. This principle applies to both personal relationships and broader social concerns. The individual who has developed inner stability can respond to family crises with helpful calm rather than adding their own panic to an already difficult situation. The citizen who maintains perspective during political upheavals can contribute more thoughtfully to democratic processes rather than being swept along by emotional currents. Tonight, as you transition from the day's activities to restorative sleep, you can rest in the knowledge that your commitment to inner development serves purposes far beyond your individual comfort. Every moment of practicing patience, every choice of wisdom over reactivity, every act of accepting what you cannot change while working skillfully with what you can influence contributes to the larger project of creating a more peaceful and rational world. Sleep deeply, knowing that tomorrow will offer fresh opportunities to practice these timeless principles of wisdom, and that each day of sincere practice contributes both to your own flourishing and to the well-being of all those whose lives intersect with yours in the magnificent web of human connection and mutual influence. Would you like me to continue with section 5 of 10 with exactly 3,000 words? The web of human connection that binds us all reveals itself most clearly in moments of quiet reflection, when the noise of daily concerns subsides and we can perceive the deeper currents that flow between all conscious beings. As you rest in the stillness of this evening, consider how your inner state ripples outward in ways both seen and unseen, influencing the quality of every interaction, every relationship, every encounter with another human soul seeking meaning and peace in this complex world. The Stoic philosophers understood that true wisdom cannot be separated from compassion, that genuine strength manifests not through domination, but through service, that authentic peace emerges not from isolation, but from right relationship with the whole of existence. This understanding transforms the practice of Stoic principles from a merely personal discipline into a form of service to the larger community of life itself. When Marcus Aurelius wrote that we were born to work together like hands and feet, working together to serve one body, he was articulating a vision of human existence that transcends individual concerns without dismissing their importance. The individual who attends carefully to their own inner development does so not out of selfishness, but out of recognition that personal wisdom and emotional stability enable more effective contribution to the common good. This perspective offers a profound shift from the common assumption that self-care and service to others are competing priorities requiring difficult choices between personal well-being and social responsibility. The Stoic path reveals that genuine self-care naturally leads to greater capacity for service, just as authentic service to others nourishes and develops our own character and wisdom. Consider how this principle manifests in your own daily experience. When you are calm and centered, how does this state influence your interactions with family members, colleagues, strangers you encounter throughout the day? When you are anxious, irritated, or overwhelmed, how does this internal condition affect the quality of your presence with others? The honest observation of these patterns reveals the intimate connection between inner work and outer service. The evening provides an ideal opportunity for this kind of honest self-observation, because the day's events remain fresh in memory, while the pressure of immediate demands has subsided. You can review recent interactions with gentle curiosity, noticing how your internal state influenced your capacity to listen deeply, respond wisely, offer helpful support, or simply provide a peaceful presence in situations of stress or conflict. This review is not intended to generate guilt or self-criticism about moments when you were less than your best self. The Stoics understood that perfection is not a human possibility, and that harsh self-judgment only compounds our mistakes without contributing to improvement. Instead, this evening reflection serves as a form of gentle education, helping you recognize patterns and possibilities that can inform future choices. Perhaps you recall a moment today when someone expressed frustration or disappointment, and you responded with patience and understanding rather than defensiveness or counterattack. That moment of wise response likely required some degree of inner stability, the ability to remain centered in yourself while creating space for another's difficult emotions. This kind of response is both a gift to the other person and a form of practice that strengthens your own capacity for future challenges. Or maybe you remember a situation where you felt triggered by someone's words or actions and reacted in a way that escalated rather than resolved the tension. This memory, while perhaps uncomfortable, offers valuable information about circumstances that challenge your equanimity and areas where additional inner work might be beneficial. Epictetus, teaching his students about the practical application of philosophical principles, emphasized that real learning happens not in theoretical discussion, but in the actual moments when we must choose between reactive patterns and conscious responses. Life provides constant opportunities for this kind of learning, and each choice we make either reinforces old patterns or creates new possibilities for wiser action. The cumulative effect of these moment-by-moment choices shapes not only our own character, but the entire atmosphere of our relationships and communities. The person who consistently chooses patience over irritation gradually becomes a source of calm in their environment. The individual who practices gratitude rather than complaint slowly shifts the emotional tone of their interactions toward appreciation and positivity. These changes often occur so gradually that they may be difficult to notice from day to day, but over time they can transform both personal relationships and broader social connections. The Stoic commitment to virtue and wisdom is thus not only a path to individual well-being, but a form of quiet activism that contributes to healing and peace in the world. This understanding can provide motivation during periods when Stoic practice feels difficult, or when the benefits of inner work are not immediately apparent. Even when you cannot see dramatic improvements in your own peace of mind or emotional stability, you can trust that sincere efforts toward wisdom and virtue are having positive effects in ways that may only become visible over time. Seneca wrote to his friend Lucilius about the importance of perseverance in philosophical practice, acknowledging that progress in wisdom is often slow and sometimes seems to move backward rather than forward. He encouraged his friend to maintain faith in the value of the work even during periods of apparent stagnation or regression, pointing out that the deepest changes in human character often happen below the threshold of conscious awareness. This perspective can be particularly helpful during challenging periods when life circumstances make it difficult to maintain the kind of inner equilibrium that Stoic practice aims to develop. Times of illness, loss, financial stress, or relationship difficulties naturally disturb our peace and may trigger reactive patterns we thought we had overcome. Rather than viewing these periods as failures of practice, we can understand them as advanced courses in the curriculum of wisdom. The person who can maintain some degree of dignity and grace during serious illness demonstrates a form of strength that transcends physical health. The individual who faces financial loss without losing their integrity shows a kind of wealth that no economic circumstance can touch. These examples point to the possibility of finding meaning and even nobility in circumstances that initially appear to offer only suffering and limitation. This transformation of perspective, seeing challenges as opportunities for growth rather than merely as problems to be solved or avoided, lies at the heart of Stoic practice. It does not require us to pretend that difficulties are pleasant or to deny the reality of pain and loss. Instead, it invites us to discover what remains possible, even within constraint, what gifts might be hidden within apparent curses, what strength might emerge through accepting and working skillfully with whatever life presents. The cultivation of this transformative perspective requires patience and gentleness with ourselves during the learning process. Like learning to play a musical instrument or speak a foreign language, developing Stoic wisdom involves periods of rapid progress, alternating with periods of apparent plateau, moments of clear insight, followed by times of confusion or discouragement. During these inevitable fluctuations in our sense of progress, it can be helpful to remember that the goal of Stoic practice is not to achieve a permanent state of unshakable tranquility, but to develop increasing skill in navigating life's inevitable ups and downs with greater wisdom and less unnecessary suffering. The measure of success is not the absence of difficulty, but the quality of our response to whatever difficulties arise. This more realistic and compassionate understanding of spiritual development can help prevent the discouragement that sometimes arises when people expect philosophical practice to eliminate all problems and negative emotions. The Stoics were not immune to sadness, anxiety, anger, or disappointment. They were human beings who had learned to work more skillfully with these universal aspects of human experience. The difference between a trained Stoic practitioner and someone who has never encountered these teachings is not that the practitioner never experiences difficult emotions, but that they have developed tools for working with such emotions constructively rather than being overwhelmed or controlled by them. They have learned to distinguish between the initial emotional response to events, which is largely automatic and beyond our direct control, and the secondary reactions we add through our judgments and interpretations, which are within our influence. For example, receiving news of a serious illness naturally triggers fear and concern. These initial emotions are appropriate and even helpful responses that motivate us to seek medical care and make necessary adjustments to our lives. However, we might add layers of additional suffering through judgments like, "This shouldn't be happening to me," or "This ruins everything," or "I'll never be happy again." These secondary reactions, while understandable, often create more distress than the original circumstance and rarely contribute anything constructive to our ability to cope with the actual situation. The Stoic practice involves learning to recognize these secondary reactions and gently questioning whether they are helpful or accurate. Often, we discover that our initial catastrophic interpretations of events prove to be exaggerated, and that we have more resources for coping than we initially assumed. This recognition does not minimize the reality of genuine challenges, but it prevents us from making difficult situations worse through unnecessary mental elaboration. As you settle into the comfort of your evening rest, you might experiment with applying this principle to any concerns or worries that arise in your mind. When you notice anxiety about tomorrow's responsibilities, you can ask yourself whether this anxiety is helping you prepare more effectively or simply creating additional stress. When you find yourself replaying a difficult conversation from earlier in the day, you can consider whether this mental activity is leading to useful insights or just reinforcing feelings of frustration or regret. This gentle questioning is not about suppressing thoughts or emotions, but about developing the capacity to work with them more skillfully. Sometimes worry does motivate helpful preparation, and sometimes reflecting on difficult interactions does lead to valuable insights about how to handle similar situations more effectively in the future. The key is learning to distinguish between mental activity that serves a constructive purpose and mental activity that simply creates additional suffering without contributing anything useful. The development of this discrimination requires practice and patience, but it gradually leads to a more peaceful and efficient use of mental energy. Instead of being drained by repetitive worry or regret, you can direct your attention toward thoughts and activities that actually contribute to wisdom, effective action, or genuine well-being. This more skillful use of attention naturally extends to your interactions with others as well. The person who is not constantly preoccupied with internal anxiety or regret has more awareness available for truly listening to others, for noticing what kind of support or presence might be most helpful in any given situation, for responding from wisdom and compassion rather than from unconscious reactivity. Tonight, as you allow your body to relax and your mind to settle into the natural rhythm of rest, you can take satisfaction in knowing that every moment of practicing this kind of awareness contributes not only to your own peace, but to the peace of all those whose lives you touch. Sleep well, knowing that tomorrow will offer fresh opportunities to practice the art of wise and compassionate living. Would you like me to continue with section 6 of 10 with exactly 3,000 words? The art of wise and compassionate living unfolds not through grand gestures or dramatic transformations, but through countless small moments of choice that accumulate over time into a way of being that radiates peace and strength. As the quiet of evening deepens around you, consider how each day offers hundreds of opportunities to practice the fundamental Stoic discipline of choosing your response rather than simply reacting from habit or impulse. These moments of choice often appear so ordinary that we might overlook their significance. The way you respond when someone cuts in front of you in traffic, how you handle a colleague's critical comment, your reaction to discovering that plans have changed unexpectedly, these seemingly minor situations are actually laboratories for developing the kind of inner stability that can sustain you through life's major challenges. The Stoic philosophers understood that character is built through consistent practice in small matters rather than through heroic responses to extraordinary circumstances. Marcus Aurelius, despite holding ultimate power over the Roman Empire, filled his personal journal with reminders to himself about basic virtues like patience, kindness, and humility. He recognized that even someone in his position needed daily practice in the fundamental disciplines of wise living. This insight offers both humility and hope to anyone seeking to develop greater wisdom and peace. We need not wait for dramatic circumstances to test our philosophical development. Every ordinary day provides abundant opportunities for practice. The person who learns to respond with equanimity to minor frustrations gradually develops the inner resources needed for major difficulties. Moreover, this daily practice creates a positive momentum that makes wise responses increasingly natural and automatic. Just as physical exercise strengthens muscles through repeated use, consistent practice of Stoic principles strengthens our capacity for calm awareness and thoughtful response. What initially requires conscious effort and deliberate choice eventually becomes second nature. This process of internalization is crucial because life often presents us with situations that require immediate response, leaving no time for lengthy philosophical reflection. The person who has practiced patience in hundreds of small situations can draw upon that accumulated strength when facing a true crisis. The individual who has consistently chosen gratitude over complaint develops a resilient optimism that can weather serious setbacks. Epictetus, drawing from his experience as both slave and teacher, emphasized that freedom is not a matter of external circumstances, but of internal capacity. The person who has developed the ability to choose their responses to events possesses a form of liberty that no external force can touch. This inner freedom becomes particularly valuable during periods when external freedoms are limited by circumstances beyond our control. Consider the current moment as you rest in the comfort and safety of your evening retreat. You have the freedom to direct your attention toward worry and anxiety about tomorrow. Or you can choose to focus on gratitude for today's experiences. You can replay difficult moments from the past, or you can engage with the present reality of peace and rest. These choices may seem small, but they shape the quality of your immediate experience and contribute to long-term patterns of mental habit. The practice of choosing your mental focus is not about denying reality or avoiding legitimate concerns. Rather, it involves learning to distinguish between productive thinking that leads to wise action and unproductive mental activity that simply creates suffering without contributing anything useful to your life or circumstances. Productive worry, for example, might involve thinking through practical steps you can take to address a legitimate concern. If you are worried about your health, productive thinking might lead you to schedule a medical checkup, improve your diet, or establish a regular exercise routine. Unproductive worry, on the other hand, involves repetitive mental cycling through fearful scenarios without generating any constructive action. Learning to make this distinction requires honest self-observation and gradual development of what we might call mental hygiene, the practice of maintaining a healthy mental environment just as we maintain physical cleanliness and order in our living spaces. This involves regularly examining our thought patterns, noticing what kinds of mental activity contribute to well-being and what kinds create unnecessary suffering. The evening hours provide an excellent opportunity for this kind of mental inventory. As you review the day's experiences, you can notice patterns in your thinking and emotional responses. What kinds of situations tend to trigger anxiety or anger? What thoughts help you feel more peaceful and centered? What mental habits contribute to happiness, and what habits tend to create distress? This self-observation should be conducted with the gentle curiosity of a scientist studying natural phenomena rather than the harsh judgment of a critic evaluating performance. The goal is not to achieve perfect control over your mental processes, which would be both impossible and undesirable, but to develop increasing awareness and skill in working with your mind. Seneca wrote extensively about the importance of this kind of gentle self-examination, arguing that we cannot improve what we do not notice. He recommended a daily practice of reviewing our thoughts, emotions, and actions, not to torture ourselves with regret, but to learn from experience and make better choices in the future. This practice of learning from experience rather than simply accumulating experience is what distinguishes wisdom from mere knowledge or age. Some people live many years without gaining much insight into themselves or life, while others develop profound understanding relatively quickly because they pay attention to their experiences and extract lessons from them. The development of this reflective capacity is one of the most valuable gifts you can give yourself. It transforms every experience, whether pleasant or difficult, into an opportunity for growth and learning. The person who approaches life with this learning mindset maintains curiosity and openness, even in challenging circumstances, asking not, "Why is this happening to me?" but "What can I learn from this situation?" This shift in perspective from victim to student, from passive recipient to active learner, fundamentally changes our relationship with difficulty and uncertainty. Instead of seeing challenges as proof that life is unfair or that we are unlucky, we can understand them as curriculum in the University of Human Experience, designed to develop capacities we might not otherwise discover. This educational approach to life's difficulties does not eliminate pain or make challenges pleasant, but it provides a framework for finding meaning and value even in unwanted experiences. The person who learns patience through dealing with delays, who develops compassion through experiencing loss, who discovers inner strength through facing fears, has gained something valuable that cannot be taken away by changing circumstances. The Stoic emphasis on virtue as the highest good points toward this kind of value. Benefits that accumulate within character and consciousness, rather than in external possessions or achievements. While external goods can be lost through accident, theft, economic change, or the simple passage of time, the qualities of character we develop through meeting life's challenges with wisdom and grace become permanent possessions that no force can steal. This understanding provides a source of security that does not depend on maintaining control over unpredictable external circumstances. The person whose sense of worth and well-being rests primarily on inner qualities like integrity, kindness, courage, and wisdom possesses a form of wealth that remains stable regardless of changing fortunes in health, relationships, career, or finances. This inner security does not require us to become indifferent to external circumstances or to stop caring about the well-being of ourselves and others. Rather, it provides a stable foundation from which we can engage fully with life while maintaining perspective about what is truly essential and what is ultimately temporary. From this grounded perspective, we can work toward external goals while holding them lightly, love deeply while accepting the reality of loss, enjoy pleasures while not depending on them for happiness, and face difficulties while not being overwhelmed by them. This balanced approach to living allows for both passionate engagement and peaceful detachment, both caring involvement and serene acceptance. The development of this balance is a lifelong process rather than a destination to be reached. Each day offers new opportunities to practice holding this middle way between excessive attachment and cold indifference, between anxious controlling and passive resignation. The person who commits to this practice gradually develops what the Stoics called equanimity, the capacity to remain centered and clear thinking regardless of external circumstances. This equanimity is not a flat emotional state or a withdrawal from caring about life. Rather, it is a dynamic stability that can accommodate the full range of human emotions while not being controlled or destabilized by them. The equanimous person can feel grief without being crushed by it, experience anger without being driven to destructive action, enjoy pleasure without becoming addicted to it, face fear without being paralyzed by it. As you settle more deeply into the peaceful stillness of this evening, you might notice how your body naturally demonstrates this kind of wise balance. Your heart continues beating without your conscious effort. Your breath flows in and out automatically. Your digestive system processes food without your deliberate control. Your body maintains countless complex processes while you remain peacefully unaware of most of them. This natural wisdom of the body offers a metaphor for the kind of inner harmony that Stoic practice aims to develop. Just as your body can maintain health through its own intelligent processes while you attend to other matters, your mind can learn to maintain emotional and mental balance through cultivated wisdom while you engage fully with the activities and relationships that give life meaning and purpose. The evening transition from wakefulness to sleep also demonstrates this natural capacity for appropriate letting go. As fatigue accumulates throughout the day, your body gradually shifts toward rest without requiring your conscious orchestration of this process. You can support this natural transition by creating conducive conditions, a comfortable environment, relaxation of physical tension, quieting of mental activity, but you cannot force sleep to occur through willpower alone. This same principle applies to many aspects of emotional and spiritual development. You can create conditions that support inner peace through practices like self-reflection, gratitude, acceptance, and mindful awareness. But you cannot manufacture serenity through force of will. Like sleep, peace emerges naturally when the right conditions are present and when you trust the process rather than trying to control it directly. Tonight, as you allow yourself to move naturally toward rest, you can practice this fundamental Stoic skill of trusting natural processes while doing your part to create beneficial conditions. Let your body relax. Allow your breathing to slow and deepen. Permit your thoughts to settle like sediment in still water, and trust that the same intelligence that governs the movements of stars and the growth of plants can guide you toward the restoration and renewal that sleep provides. Would you like me to continue with section 7 of 10 with exactly 3,000 words? The intelligence that guides natural processes extends far beyond the biological rhythms of your physical body to encompass the deeper patterns of growth, change, and renewal that characterize all of existence. As you surrender to the natural movement toward sleep, you participate in the same cosmic rhythm that governs the cycle of seasons, the phases of the moon, the birth and death of stars, and the endless dance of creation and dissolution that underlies all phenomena. This perspective, fundamental to Stoic philosophy, locates individual human experience within a vast and interconnected whole, where nothing happens in isolation, and every event participates in larger patterns of meaning and purpose. Marcus Aurelius frequently reminded himself that he was not separate from nature, but an integral part of it, subject to the same laws of change and transformation that govern all natural processes. Understanding this interconnectedness can provide profound comfort during periods of difficulty or uncertainty. When you feel lost or confused, you can remember that you are held within a larger intelligence that has been guiding evolutionary processes for billions of years. The same creative force that transformed simple chemical compounds into complex living systems, that developed consciousness from inanimate matter, that gave birth to love, beauty, wisdom, and compassion, continues to work through your own life experiences. This does not mean that everything happens according to some predetermined plan that eliminates human choice and responsibility. Rather, it suggests that the universe is structured in ways that support growth, learning, and development, and that even apparently random or meaningless events can contribute to processes of maturation and wisdom that extend far beyond our immediate understanding. The Stoic concept of sympathia describes this fundamental interconnectedness of all things, suggesting that what affects one part of the cosmic whole inevitably influences every other part. From this perspective, your individual efforts toward wisdom and virtue are not merely personal achievements, but contributions to the evolution of consciousness itself. Every moment of choosing patience over anger, acceptance over resistance, compassion over judgment, adds to the total sum of wisdom and peace in the world. This understanding transforms personal spiritual development from a potentially selfish preoccupation into a form of service to the whole of existence. The person who works to become more peaceful, wise, and compassionate is not only improving their own life, but contributing to the healing and evolution of the entire human family. This recognition can provide motivation and meaning even when the benefits of inner work are not immediately apparent in your own experience. Epictetus taught his students that they were not isolated individuals struggling against an indifferent universe, but participants in a great cosmic drama where their choices and responses matter not only for their personal well-being, but for the unfolding of the larger story of consciousness, awakening to itself. This participation gives dignity and significance to even the most ordinary moments of choosing between wisdom and foolishness, virtue and vice, love and fear. Consider how this perspective might influence your experience of the small challenges and opportunities that fill your daily life. The moment when you feel irritated by someone's behavior becomes an opportunity to practice patience and understanding. The situation that triggers anxiety becomes a chance to develop trust and acceptance. The interaction that brings up anger becomes a laboratory for learning compassion and forgiveness. From this perspective, there are no meaningless experiences, no wasted opportunities for growth, no situations that are purely obstacles without any potential for learning or service. Even the most difficult circumstances can become doorways to greater wisdom and compassion if approached with the right attitude and understanding. This does not mean that you should feel grateful for suffering or pretend that painful experiences are pleasant. The Stoics were not masochists who sought out difficulty for its own sake. Rather, they were pragmatists who recognized that difficulty is inevitable in human life, and that the quality of our response to unavoidable challenges determines whether these experiences contribute to wisdom or merely to bitterness and despair. The development of this transformative approach to difficulty requires patient cultivation over time. It is not something that can be achieved through willpower or positive thinking alone, but emerges gradually through consistent practice of seeing challenges as opportunities for growth rather than simply as problems to be solved or avoided. This practice begins with small, everyday frustrations and gradually develops into a capacity that can handle major life challenges with equanimity and grace. The person who learns to respond to traffic delays with patience develops inner resources that serve them well during periods of illness or loss. The individual who practices acceptance when plans change unexpectedly prepares themselves for the larger adaptations that life inevitably requires. Seneca wrote extensively about this process of gradual development, comparing it to the way that plants grow slowly and steadily toward maturity, rather than transforming overnight. He encouraged his readers to be patient with themselves during the learning process, recognizing that sustainable change happens gradually through consistent practice, rather than through dramatic breakthroughs or sudden transformations. This patience with the process of development extends to accepting the reality that growth often involves periods of apparent regression or stagnation. Just as plants may appear dormant during winter while actually developing stronger root systems underground, periods of difficulty or confusion in our spiritual development often precede important breakthroughs in understanding or capacity. The evening hours provide an ideal opportunity to reflect on this long-term process of development with appreciation rather than impatience. Instead of focusing on how far you still have to go in developing wisdom and peace, you can acknowledge the progress you have already made, however small it might seem. The very fact that you are interested in philosophical wisdom and committed to inner development represents a significant achievement in itself. Consider the person you were 1 year ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. Can you notice ways that you have become more patient, more understanding, more accepting of life's uncertainties? Have there been situations that would have completely destabilized you in the past, but that you now handle with greater equanimity? These observations can provide encouragement and evidence that the gradual work of inner development does bear fruit, even when progress seems slow or intermittent. This recognition of progress should not lead to complacency or self-congratulation, but rather to a balanced perspective that acknowledges both how far you have come and how much room remains for continued growth. The Stoic path is not about reaching a final destination of perfect wisdom, but about committing to lifelong learning and development. Even the most advanced practitioners remained students throughout their lives, always discovering new depths of understanding and new opportunities for applying philosophical principles. This beginner's mind, characterized by curiosity and openness rather than fixed opinions and rigid positions, is actually a sign of advanced development rather than lack of progress. The person who thinks they have nothing left to learn has stopped growing, while the individual who remains curious about life's lessons continues to develop wisdom regardless of their age or experience. As you rest in the quietude of this evening, you can appreciate being part of this ancient tradition of seekers who have dedicated themselves to the cultivation of wisdom, virtue, and peace. You join a community that extends across centuries and cultures, united not by shared beliefs or practices, but by a common commitment to living with greater awareness, compassion, and integrity. This sense of connection to a larger tradition can provide support during periods when the path of wisdom seems lonely or difficult. The challenges you face in developing patience, acceptance, and emotional balance are the same challenges that have been faced by countless individuals throughout human history. The insights and tools that help you navigate these challenges have been tested and refined by generations of practitioners. The Stoic emphasis on practical wisdom rather than abstract philosophy means that these teachings remain as relevant today as they were in ancient Greece and Rome. The fundamental human experiences of loss, disappointment, conflict, uncertainty, and mortality have not changed, and the inner resources needed to meet these experiences with dignity and grace remain the same across all historical periods. The specific circumstances of modern life may create new forms of stress and complexity, but the underlying principles for maintaining inner peace remain constant. The person facing job insecurity in the current economy can apply the same principles of focusing on what they can control that helped ancient Romans deal with political upheaval. The individuals struggling with relationship difficulties can draw on the same wisdom about acceptance and letting go that guided Stoic philosophers through their own interpersonal challenges. This timeless quality of philosophical wisdom provides a sense of stability and continuity in a world characterized by rapid change and uncertainty. While external circumstances shift dramatically from generation to generation, the human need for meaning, purpose, and inner peace remains constant, and the tools for meeting this need have been preserved and transmitted through centuries of practice and teaching. Tonight, as you prepare to enter the restorative state of sleep, you can draw comfort from knowing that you are supported not only by your own efforts, but by the accumulated wisdom of countless individuals who have walked this path before you. Their insights, preserved in writings and transmitted through oral tradition, remain available to guide and inspire your own journey toward greater wisdom and peace. The transition into sleep itself becomes a metaphor for the kind of trust and surrender that characterizes advanced Stoic practice. Just as you must let go of conscious control in order to rest, the development of true wisdom requires releasing the illusion that you can manage all aspects of your experience through willpower and strategy alone. Some things must be trusted to processes larger and deeper than individual effort. This surrender is not passive resignation, but intelligent cooperation with natural laws and processes that operate beyond the reach of personal control. The farmer who plants seeds must trust in the intelligence of growth that lies dormant within each seed. The parent who raises children must ultimately trust in the innate wisdom and resilience that will guide their offspring toward maturity. The student of philosophy must trust that sincere practice will gradually bear fruit even when progress seems slow or uncertain. As consciousness gently dissolves into the peaceful darkness of sleep, you can rest assured that the same intelligence that guides this natural transition continues to work through all aspects of your life, supporting your growth in wisdom and compassion, even during periods when you are not consciously focused on philosophical development. Sleep well, knowing that tomorrow will bring fresh opportunities to practice the timeless art of living wisely and peacefully within the magnificent mystery of existence. Would you like me to continue with section 8 of 10 with exactly 3,000 words? The magnificent mystery of existence reveals itself most profoundly in those liminal moments when conscious awareness begins to dissolve into the deeper rhythms that sustain all life. As you find yourself poised at the threshold between waking and sleeping, between the known and the unknown, you participate in one of the most fundamental acts of trust that human beings perform countless times throughout their lives: the willingness to let go of vigilant control and surrender to processes that operate beyond the reach of conscious direction. This nightly surrender offers a profound teaching about the nature of wisdom itself. The Stoic philosophers understood that true strength often manifests not through forceful action, but through knowing when to yield, not through constant striving, but through recognizing when to rest, not through maintaining rigid control, but through learning to flow with the deeper currents that guide all natural processes toward their proper fulfillment. Marcus Aurelius, writing in his private journal during the quiet hours before dawn, often reflected on this paradox of strength through surrender. He observed that the most powerful forces in nature, water wearing away stone, wind shaping mountains, time transforming civilizations, accomplish their work through persistent gentleness rather than violent effort. This insight informed his approach to leadership and personal development alike, teaching him to trust in gradual processes rather than demanding immediate results. The wisdom of surrender does not advocate for passivity or resignation in the face of injustice or challenge. Rather, it points toward a more sophisticated understanding of when to act and when to yield, when to push forward and when to step back, when to speak and when to remain silent. This discernment develops through careful observation of both inner patterns and outer circumstances, learning to recognize the natural rhythms that govern all effective action. Consider how this principle manifests in your own daily experience. There are times when concentrated effort and determined action serve you well, moments that call for courage, persistence, and unwavering commitment to your values. But there are also times when the wisest course involves patience, acceptance, and trust in processes that cannot be hurried through force of will alone. Learning to distinguish between these different types of situations requires the development of what the Stoics called practical wisdom, the ability to perceive accurately what is happening both within yourself and in your environment, and to respond appropriately rather than automatically. This wisdom emerges gradually through the accumulation of experience, combined with thoughtful reflection on that experience. The evening hours provide an excellent opportunity for developing this reflective capacity. As you review the day's events, you can examine moments when you acted from wisdom versus moments when you reacted from habit or emotion. What situations called for patient acceptance, and did you recognize them as such? When did circumstances require decisive action, and were you able to respond with appropriate energy and commitment? This kind of honest self-examination should be conducted with compassion rather than harsh judgment. The goal is not to achieve perfect performance, but to develop increasing sensitivity to the subtle cues that can guide us toward more skillful responses. Like learning to play music or speak a foreign language, developing practical wisdom requires patient practice and gentle correction of mistakes, rather than demanding immediate perfection. Epictetus, drawing from his experience of both slavery and freedom, taught that external circumstances never determine our essential well-being. Even in the most constrained situations, some element of choice remains available to us. We may not be able to control what happens to us, but we can always influence how we respond to what happens. This inner freedom represents the most fundamental form of human liberty, the freedom to choose our attitude regardless of external conditions. This teaching becomes particularly relevant during periods of difficulty when external options seem limited, or when circumstances appear to offer no good choices. Even then, the quality of our inner response remains within our influence. We can face challenges with bitterness or with grace, with resentment or with acceptance, with despair or with quiet dignity. These choices may seem small in comparison to the magnitude of external events, but they often determine whether difficult circumstances lead to wisdom or merely to suffering. The development of this inner freedom requires honest recognition of our actual sphere of influence. Much of human suffering stems from trying to control things that lie beyond our power, while neglecting areas where we do have genuine agency. The person who spends energy worrying about others' opinions while ignoring their own behavior patterns misallocates their attention in ways that virtually guarantee frustration and ineffectiveness. The Stoic practice of distinguishing between what is up to us and what is not up to us provides a practical framework for more skillful allocation of attention and effort. Our thoughts, values, attitudes, and responses to events fall within our sphere of influence, even if we cannot control them perfectly. Other people's actions, natural disasters, economic conditions, political developments, and countless other factors remain largely outside our direct control, regardless of how much we might wish to influence them. This distinction is not always easy to apply in practice, because the boundaries are often subtle and may shift depending on circumstances. For example, your health is influenced by factors both within and beyond your control. You can affect your well-being through diet, exercise, stress management, and medical care, but you cannot eliminate all risk of illness or injury. Wisdom lies in taking appropriate responsibility for what you can influence while accepting the reality of factors beyond your control. Similarly, your relationships involve elements of both choice and circumstance. You can influence the quality of your connections with others through your own behavior, communication, and attitude, but you cannot control how others respond to your efforts or guarantee that relationships will develop as you hope they will. The wise approach involves offering your best while remaining unattached to specific outcomes. This practice of appropriate effort combined with unattachment to results reflects one of the most sophisticated aspects of Stoic philosophy. It avoids both the extremes of anxious over-effort and careless indifference by finding a middle way that honors both responsibility and acceptance. From this balanced perspective, you can engage fully with life while maintaining the inner stability that comes from not depending entirely on external results for your sense of worth and well-being. Seneca wrote extensively about this balance, describing it as a form of enlightened engagement that allows for passionate involvement without the suffering that comes from excessive attachment. He compared it to the way skilled actors can throw themselves completely into their roles, while remaining aware that they are performing in a play. This metaphor suggests a kind of conscious participation that is both wholehearted and detached, both committed and free. The application of this perspective to daily life can transform ordinary activities into opportunities for spiritual development. The parent caring for children can love deeply while accepting that their offspring will ultimately make their own choices. The professional can work diligently while recognizing that success depends on factors beyond personal effort alone. The friend can offer support while understanding that each person must find their own path through life's challenges. This approach does not diminish the importance of caring or reduce life to a meaningless game. Rather, it allows for a more sustainable form of engagement that can weather the inevitable disappointments and setbacks that accompany any serious commitment to meaningful action. The person who can maintain perspective during both success and failure develops a resilience that serves them well throughout all the changing circumstances of a human lifetime. As you settle more deeply into the peaceful stillness of this evening, you might notice how your body demonstrates this wisdom of appropriate effort and natural surrender. Your heart beats steadily without requiring constant conscious attention. Your breath flows in and out automatically, adjusting to your body's needs without deliberate management. Your digestive system processes food, your immune system maintains health, and countless other vital functions continue without your direct control or supervision. This biological wisdom offers a model for psychological and spiritual development as well. Just as your body maintains health through intelligent processes that operate below the threshold of consciousness, your mind can learn to maintain emotional balance and clarity through cultivated habits that become increasingly natural and automatic over time. The development of these beneficial mental habits requires initial conscious effort and attention, but gradually they become integrated into your normal way of responding to life's circumstances. The person who consistently practices patience in small matters finds that patience becomes their natural response, even in challenging situations. The individual who cultivates gratitude regularly discovers that appreciation becomes their default attitude toward life's experiences. This transformation of conscious practice into natural response represents one of the most hopeful aspects of human development. It suggests that positive change is not only possible, but tends to become self-reinforcing over time. Each choice in the direction of wisdom makes future wise choices more likely. Each moment of choosing peace over anxiety, acceptance over resistance, compassion over judgment, strengthens your capacity for similar choices in the future. The evening reflection on this gradual process of positive change can provide both motivation for continued practice and appreciation for progress already made. Even if you cannot see dramatic improvements from day to day, the cumulative effect of consistent practice creates substantial transformation over longer periods of time. The person who commits to this patient approach to development often discovers capabilities and strengths they never imagined they possessed. This recognition of hidden potential within yourself reflects a fundamental Stoic teaching about human nature. The philosophers of this tradition believed that every person possesses an innate capacity for wisdom, virtue, and peace, but that these qualities must be cultivated through practice and experience to reach their full development. Like seeds that contain the potential for mighty trees, human beings carry within themselves the possibility of remarkable growth and transformation. The realization of this potential does not happen automatically or without effort, but neither does it require superhuman abilities or extraordinary circumstances. The ordinary events of daily life provide abundant opportunities for practicing the qualities that lead to genuine happiness and fulfillment. Every interaction offers a chance to develop patience, kindness, or understanding. Every challenge presents an opportunity to discover inner strength and resilience. Every moment of choosing conscious response over automatic reaction contributes to the gradual awakening of wisdom. As consciousness begins its natural transition toward the restorative state of sleep, you can rest in the confidence that this process of awakening continues even during periods of apparent rest. The same intelligence that governs physical healing and regeneration during sleep also supports the deeper processes of psychological and spiritual development that unfolds throughout a lifetime of sincere practice and dedication to wisdom. Would you like me to continue with section 9 of 10 with exactly 3,000 words? The lifetime of sincere practice and dedication to wisdom that unfolds through countless ordinary moments represents perhaps the most extraordinary journey a human being can undertake. As the gentle darkness of evening continues to deepen around you, consider how this journey toward greater understanding and peace does not require dramatic departures from normal life, but rather involves a gradual transformation in the quality of attention and intention you bring to the experiences that already fill your days. This transformation begins with the simple recognition that every moment offers a choice between wisdom and habit, between conscious response and automatic reaction, between connection and separation. The accumulation of these moment-by-moment choices over weeks, months, and years creates the substance of a life well lived, a life characterized by increasing peace, resilience, and compassion, regardless of external circumstances. The Stoic philosophers understood that this process of inner development cannot be rushed or forced through willpower alone, but must be allowed to unfold according to its own natural rhythms. Like the growth of a tree, which happens gradually and often imperceptibly from day to day, while creating remarkable change over seasons and years, the cultivation of wisdom requires patience with processes that operate on timescales longer than our immediate desires for transformation. Marcus Aurelius frequently reminded himself of this need for patience with his own development, recognizing that even someone committed to philosophical practice would experience periods of frustration, confusion, and apparent regression. He wrote these reminders not as abstract principles but as practical guidance for navigating the actual challenges of maintaining inner peace while fulfilling complex external responsibilities. This realistic approach to spiritual development acknowledges that the path of wisdom involves cycles of progress and setback, clarity and confusion, strength and weakness. Rather than viewing these cycles as evidence of failure or inadequate practice, the mature practitioner learns to see them as natural fluctuations that provide opportunities for developing different aspects of wisdom and resilience. During periods of clarity and strength, we can practice gratitude and service, using our inner resources to support others and contribute positively to our communities. During times of difficulty and confusion, we can develop patience and humility, learning to ask for help when needed and to find meaning even in circumstances that challenge our usual sense of competence and control. This cyclical understanding of development helps prevent the discouragement that can arise when people expect consistent, linear progress in their inner work. The person who understands that growth involves natural rhythms of expansion and contraction, activity and rest, learning and integration, can maintain their commitment to practice even during periods when benefits are not immediately apparent. Epictetus, teaching his students about the practical application of philosophical principles, emphasized that real learning happens not through intellectual understanding alone, but through the actual experience of applying wisdom in challenging situations. Life provides countless opportunities for this kind of experiential learning, and each situation we meet with greater awareness and skill prepares us for future challenges that may require even greater capacity. This experiential approach to wisdom development means that no experience is wasted, no difficulty is purely negative, and no period of life is without value for our overall growth and understanding. The person who approaches life as a curriculum for wisdom can find meaning and purpose even in circumstances that initially appear meaningless or purely obstructive. The evening hours offer a natural opportunity for reflecting on the day's experiences as lessons in this ongoing curriculum of wisdom. Rather than simply reviewing events to judge them as good or bad, pleasant or unpleasant, you can examine them for the insights and growth opportunities they provided. What did today's challenges teach you about your patterns of reaction? What did today's interactions reveal about your capacity for patience, kindness, or understanding? This educational approach to daily experience transforms the quality of life itself. Instead of feeling like a victim of random events or a passive recipient of whatever circumstances arise, you become an active participant in your own development, someone who can extract value and meaning from whatever situations present themselves. This shift in perspective from passive recipient to active learner represents one of the most empowering aspects of Stoic philosophy. It suggests that regardless of external circumstances, you always retain the capacity to grow in wisdom, strength, and compassion through the quality of your response to whatever you encounter. This inner capacity for development cannot be taken away by any external force, making it a reliable foundation for well-being that does not depend on maintaining control over unpredictable circumstances. Seneca wrote extensively about this inner source of security, arguing that the person who has developed their character and wisdom possesses a form of wealth that cannot be stolen by thieves, destroyed by natural disasters, or lost through economic collapse. This internal wealth consists not of material possessions, but of the qualities of mind and heart that enable skillful and compassionate response to whatever life presents. The cultivation of this inner wealth requires consistent attention to the small choices that shape character over time. The decision to respond with patience rather than irritation when someone moves slowly in front of you. The choice to listen carefully when someone needs to express their concerns. The commitment to act with integrity even when dishonesty might be more convenient. These apparently minor decisions accumulate into the substance of a life lived with wisdom and virtue. This accumulative understanding of character development offers hope to anyone who feels overwhelmed by the magnitude of inner work that seems required for genuine peace and happiness. You need not transform yourself completely in dramatic fashion. You need only commit to making slightly wiser choices consistently over time. The person who becomes 1% more patient, kind, or understanding each day will experience profound transformation over the course of months and years. This gradual approach also makes the path of wisdom accessible to people living ordinary lives with normal responsibilities and limitations. The parent caring for children, the employee managing workplace stress, the individual dealing with health concerns or financial pressures, all can participate in this process of inner development without requiring dramatic changes in their external circumstances or lifestyle. The accessibility of wisdom through ordinary life reflects a fundamental Stoic insight about the relationship between external conditions and inner development. While certain circumstances may make practice easier or more difficult, no external situation can prevent someone from developing greater wisdom and peace if they are committed to that development. The person who finds meaning and purpose in their current circumstances, however challenging they may be, often discovers resources and capabilities they never imagined they possessed. This discovery of hidden inner resources represents one of the most rewarding aspects of committed philosophical practice. As you learn to meet life's challenges with increasing skill and composure, you develop confidence in your ability to handle whatever future difficulties may arise. This confidence does not depend on the ability to prevent problems from occurring, but rather on the knowledge that you have the inner resources to respond constructively to whatever problems do arise. The development of this unshakable confidence in your inner capacity represents a profound form of security that does not depend on external circumstances remaining stable or predictable. The person who has learned to find peace within themselves can maintain that peace even when external conditions become chaotic or uncertain. This inner stability becomes a gift not only to yourself, but to everyone whose life intersects with yours. Consider how your own inner state influences the atmosphere of your relationships and interactions. When you are centered and peaceful, do others respond differently than when you are anxious or agitated? How does your emotional state affect the quality of conversations, the productivity of work relationships, or the harmony of your household? These observations reveal the far-reaching effects of inner development, extending well beyond personal benefit to contribute to the well-being of your entire social environment. This recognition that personal wisdom serves collective well-being provides additional motivation for the sometimes challenging work of inner development. The effort you put into developing patience, understanding, and emotional balance contributes not only to your own peace, but to the peace of your family, your workplace, and your community. In this sense, the cultivation of wisdom becomes a form of service to the larger web of life in which all beings participate. The Stoic emphasis on our fundamental interconnection with all life suggests that individual development and social responsibility are not competing priorities, but complementary aspects of the same commitment to living well. The person who becomes more peaceful, wise, and compassionate naturally becomes a more positive influence in their community. The individual who contributes thoughtfully to collective well-being often finds that such service supports their own continued growth and development. This integration of personal and social good reflects the holistic nature of genuine wisdom, which cannot be separated from compassion and service. The truly wise person naturally acts for the benefit of the whole while maintaining their own well-being and integrity. This is not self-sacrifice that depletes inner resources, but rather a form of enlightened self-interest that recognizes the intimate connection between individual and collective flourishing. As you rest in the quiet sanctuary of this evening, you can appreciate the profound gift of being able to participate in this ancient tradition of wisdom cultivation while simultaneously contributing to the healing and evolution of consciousness in your own time and place. Your individual efforts to develop greater peace, understanding, and compassion join with the efforts of countless others throughout history who have dedicated themselves to the same essential work. This sense of participation in something larger than individual concerns can provide both inspiration and comfort during periods when the path of wisdom seems difficult or when progress appears slow. You are not alone in this work, nor are you expected to achieve perfection through your own efforts alone. You are part of a vast community of seekers, both historical and contemporary, all working toward the same goal of reducing suffering and increasing peace in the world. The tradition you join through your commitment to wisdom has been tested and refined through centuries of practice by people facing every conceivable form of challenge and difficulty. The tools and perspectives that guide your own development have been shaped by the experiences of countless individuals who have walked this path before you, each adding their own insights and understanding to the accumulated wisdom available to support your journey. Tonight, as consciousness prepares for the restorative journey into sleep, you can rest assured that this support continues to surround and sustain you. The wisdom you seek is not a distant goal, but a present reality waiting to be recognized and expressed through your daily choices and responses. Tomorrow will offer fresh opportunities to practice this timeless art of living with greater wisdom, peace, and compassion. Would you like me to continue with section 10 of 10 with exactly 3,000 words? Tomorrow will offer fresh opportunities to practice this timeless art of living with greater wisdom, peace, and compassion. Yet the profound truth that sustains all genuine practice is that wisdom is not something to be achieved in the future, but something to be recognized and embodied in this very moment. As your consciousness settles into the deepening quiet of evening, you can rest in the understanding that everything you need for peace and fulfillment already exists within the present experience of simply being alive, aware, and capable of choice. This recognition transforms the entire enterprise of wisdom cultivation from a project of becoming someone different into a process of discovering who you already are beneath the layers of conditioning, habit, and unconscious reaction that often obscure your essential nature. The Stoic philosophers understood that we are not fundamentally broken beings who must be fixed through philosophical practice, but rather whole beings who have temporarily forgotten our wholeness and need only to remember what we have always known at the deepest level of our being. Marcus Aurelius, in his most intimate reflections, repeatedly returned to this theme of remembering rather than acquiring, of uncovering rather than constructing, of returning to natural wisdom rather than imposing artificial systems upon life. He observed that children possess an innate sense of wonder, presence, and spontaneous joy that adults often lose through the accumulated weight of expectations, disappointments, and social conditioning. The path of wisdom involves not becoming childlike in the sense of avoiding responsibility, but rediscovering the childlike qualities of curiosity, openness, and natural contentment. This perspective offers a profound reframing of the relationship between effort and attainment in spiritual development. While consistent practice remains essential for cultivating wisdom, the goal of that practice is not to create something that does not exist, but to remove the obstacles that prevent the natural expression of peace, compassion, and understanding that represent our deepest nature. Like a gardener who does not create the plant's capacity for growth, but simply provides conditions that allow that inherent capacity to flourish. The practitioner of wisdom creates conditions that allow their essential wholeness to shine forth. These conditions include the practices we have explored throughout this evening journey. Honest self-examination, patient acceptance of what cannot be changed, conscious choice of responses rather than automatic reactions, gratitude for what is present rather than complaint about what is absent, and trust in the larger intelligence that governs natural processes. None of these practices require superhuman effort or extraordinary abilities. All are available to any person willing to bring gentle attention to the ordinary moments that comprise daily life. The simplicity of these practices should not be confused with ease of implementation. Like learning to play a musical instrument or speak a foreign language, developing wisdom requires patient repetition of basic skills until they become natural and automatic. The person who commits to this patient approach often discovers that what initially seemed difficult gradually becomes effortless, not because the challenges disappear, but because their capacity to meet challenges with equanimity and skill continues to develop. Epictetus taught that this development happens most effectively when we approach it with what he called disciplined desire, the willingness to want what we already have while working skillfully toward appropriate goals without attachment to specific outcomes. This disciplined desire allows for passionate engagement with life while maintaining the inner freedom that comes from not depending entirely on external circumstances for happiness and fulfillment. The cultivation of disciplined desire begins with recognizing the abundance that already surrounds us in each moment. Even during difficult periods, countless gifts remain available for those who have eyes to see them. The simple fact that you can breathe without conscious effort, that your heart continues beating while you sleep, that your mind can contemplate ideas and possibilities, that you have the capacity to feel love and compassion. These are miraculous endowments that we typically take for granted until they are threatened or lost. Developing genuine appreciation for these basic gifts of existence creates a foundation of contentment that no external circumstances can destroy. The person who can find gratitude for the gift of consciousness itself possesses a form of wealth that remains stable regardless of changes in health, relationships, financial circumstances, or social status. This inner wealth provides the security that allows for generous engagement with others and confident action in the world. From this foundation of grateful contentment, appropriate action arises naturally without the strain and anxiety that characterize efforts motivated primarily by fear, lack, or the desire to prove oneself worthy. The person who acts from wholeness rather than from deficit brings a quality of presence and effectiveness to their activities that serves both their own well-being and the benefit of others. This kind of action feels effortless, even when it requires significant energy, because it flows from alignment with natural purposes rather than against them. Seneca wrote extensively about this effortless effectiveness, describing it as the natural result of aligning personal will with the larger intelligence that governs cosmic processes. When our individual efforts harmonize with universal principles, we find ourselves supported by forces much greater than our personal resources. This support manifests not as external intervention that solves our problems for us, but as inner clarity, strength, and wisdom that enable us to respond skillfully to whatever challenges arise. The experience of this kind of support often comes as a profound relief to people who have spent years trying to manage their lives through willpower and strategic thinking alone. While planning and effort remain important, they become expressions of wisdom rather than substitutes for it. The person who acts from wisdom finds that right action becomes increasingly natural and spontaneous, emerging from clear perception of circumstances rather than from complicated mental calculations about what should be done. This spontaneous wisdom represents the fruition of philosophical practice, the point at which conscious effort has created sufficient inner stability and clarity that appropriate responses arise naturally without lengthy deliberation. Like a skilled musician who no longer needs to think consciously about finger positions or timing, the mature practitioner of wisdom responds to life situations with a grace that appears effortless, but is actually the result of years of patient cultivation. The development of this natural responsiveness cannot be forced or hurried, but it can be supported through the kind of gentle, consistent practice that we have been exploring together this evening. Each moment of choosing awareness over distraction, each decision to respond rather than react, each instance of accepting what cannot be changed while working skillfully with what can be influenced, contributes to the gradual development of the inner resources that make spontaneous wisdom possible. This understanding can help sustain motivation during periods when the benefits of philosophical practice are not immediately apparent. The person who plants seeds does not expect to harvest fruit immediately, but trusts that consistent care and attention will eventually produce the desired results. Similarly, the practitioner of wisdom can trust that sincere effort will gradually bear fruit even when progress seems slow or uncertain. The metaphor of gardening is particularly apt because it acknowledges both the necessity of human effort and the importance of natural processes that cannot be controlled or hurried. The gardener can prepare soil, plant seeds, provide water and protection from harsh weather, but cannot force plants to grow faster than their natural rhythm allows. This same balance of effort and trust characterizes the most effective approaches to inner development. As you settle more completely into the peaceful stillness of this late evening hour, you can appreciate how this balance of effort and surrender manifests in the natural transition towards sleep. You have done what you can to create conditions conducive to rest, finding a comfortable position, allowing physical tension to release, letting go of the day's concerns and tomorrow's plans. Now you can trust the natural intelligence of your body and mind to carry you into the restorative state that will prepare you for tomorrow's opportunities to practice wisdom and compassion. This nightly surrender to sleep offers a profound teaching about the nature of trust itself. In order to rest deeply, you must release the vigilant monitoring that characterizes waking consciousness, allowing yourself to become temporarily unconscious and vulnerable. This act of trust, repeated nightly throughout your life, demonstrates your fundamental faith in the beneficent nature of existence itself. The same trust that allows you to sleep peacefully can be cultivated in waking life as well. Just as you trust your body's wisdom to maintain vital functions while you rest, you can learn to trust the larger wisdom that governs all natural processes, including the process of your own growth and development. This trust does not eliminate the need for conscious effort and responsibility, but it provides a foundation of confidence that supports effective action without the anxiety that comes from believing you must control every aspect of your experience. The cultivation of this fundamental trust represents perhaps the deepest teaching that philosophical practice can offer. When you truly understand that you are held within a larger intelligence that has been guiding evolutionary processes for billions of years, that has created the remarkable phenomenon of consciousness itself, that continues to work through your own life experiences to promote growth, learning, and the development of wisdom and compassion. You can relax the desperate effort to manage every detail of your existence and instead participate consciously in the grand unfolding of which you are an integral part. This participation does not require you to understand the ultimate purposes or meanings of existence, but simply to align yourself as fully as possible with what you can recognize as the highest and best possibilities available in each moment. When faced with the choice between patience and irritation, you can choose patience. When presented with opportunities for kindness or indifference, you can choose kindness. When confronted with the option of accepting what cannot be changed or continuing to resist it uselessly, you can choose acceptance. These simple choices, made moment by moment throughout ordinary days, constitute the substance of a life lived in harmony with wisdom. They require no special knowledge, extraordinary circumstances, or superhuman abilities. They are available to anyone willing to pay attention to their experience and choose consciously rather than reacting automatically from habit or conditioning. The cumulative effect of these conscious choices creates a life of increasing peace, meaning, and connection with others. The person who commits to this path discovers that happiness is not something to be pursued as a goal, but something that emerges naturally as a byproduct of living with integrity, wisdom, and compassion. This happiness does not depend on external circumstances being perfect, but arises from the deep satisfaction of knowing that you are living in alignment with your highest understanding and contributing positively to the web of life of which you are part. As consciousness now prepares for its nightly journey into the restorative darkness of sleep, you can rest in the profound peace that comes from knowing that every day offers fresh opportunities to live with greater wisdom and love, that every challenge provides new possibilities for growth and service, and that the same intelligence that guides the stars in their courses continues to work through your own life to promote the highest good for yourself and all beings. In this trust, in this peace, in this fundamental okayness with existence as it is while remaining committed to expressing the best that you can be, you can allow sleep to come naturally, knowing that tomorrow will dawn with new possibilities for practicing the timeless art of living wisely and peacefully within the magnificent mystery of being human in this extraordinary universe.